Hey students, this is Miss Maples, and I am recording this as an example of what your ScreenCastify would be like if you choose to do the presentation for your research that you are conducting. So I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation now. So my Unit 3 Essential Question Research presentation is on this question. What are the effects of COVID-19 on the teenage population, both mentally and physically? So to introduce this topic, I picked it because this is very current and close to my heart since I am a high school teacher. What are the effects of COVID-19 on the population, both mentally and physically? How are teenagers affected both physically by the virus and mentally through everything that we're going through right now? This is important because teens are sometimes overlooked, I think, especially during this time when everyone's kind of in crisis mode. Adults have to be the earners generally in a household, and young kids need constant care. But I feel like sometimes teens are left in the middle in this situation and left to fend for themselves during a time that generally is very social. Teenagers tend to go see friends, get out of their house in order to maintain mental health. And since many of those things are taken away, it is problematic, right? And there has been so much done in these last few months on this topic. There is information on the CDC website. There are many articles out there about teenagers and how this is affecting them. So I thought I would take a look at some of that. So my first review of the literature is I went to the CDC website and looked at the article COVID-19 in Children and Teens. And this website helped me answer my research question by showing me that while teens and children can contract and spread the virus, in general, young people are not as physically affected by the virus as older individuals. Now, that doesn't include if you have a pre-existing condition. It's still dangerous, but in general, the research shows that young people tend to handle the virus physically better. However, they can be asymptomatic. So it's common that children and teens do not show symptoms when they contract the virus, but can spread it just as easily as anyone else. So they can definitely be spreaders of it. Adolescents may have a much lower chance of serious illness, but they bear the burden of not becoming infected, right? So that's, even if they would handle it okay, if they become infected, they could spread it to other family members or community members who would be harmed more by the virus, older populations, those with pre-existing conditions. So that's the burden that teenagers bear, like they not being able to go out and do things like they normally would, for fear that they spread the virus. And the fact that many children and teens are not symptomatic makes it more likely that they would continue their regular daily interactions, not knowing that they're infected. And that can be problematic. Research shows that younger adults and teens have spread this virus quite a bit because they're social, and they tend to not know that they're sick when they get it, or fewer of them know that they're sick. To look at the mental health aspect of this, I read a New York Times article called Teens in COVID Isolation. I felt like I was suffocating, that spoke specifically with one teen, but also just brought up research and topics around this. So this helped me answer my research question by showing me the burden that teens bear with when it comes to mental health. Most teens may not be at high risk for physical health problems as a result of COVID-19 infection. However, their mental health due to the stress and isolation and stress of isolation and school closures is definitely at high risk. So even if teens aren't the main population being physically affected by the virus, it seems that they are one of the main populations mentally affected. Because school is such a big part of the teenage experience, social groups are such a big part of the teenage experience, and both of those things have been taken away from teens during this time. The impact has been especially severe on teenagers who rely on their friends to navigate the maze and pressures of high school life. That's a direct quote from the article. Especially severe shows me that teens might be one of the most affected populations mentally, which makes me personally very sad. And I've seen it myself in dealing with teenagers. This is a really difficult time to stay focused, to keep away from high anxiety or feelings of depression. So that kind of brought it up to me even more. And then a study that was conducted in the Netherlands showed that young people reported a significant increase in severe anxiety and sleeping problems during the country's lockdown period. So we are again entering another lockdown period. We have been under somewhat lockdown social distancing this whole time. And not just in this country, but in other countries too. It's the lack of routine, the stress involved with isolation, and all the additional stresses on families have made it really hard for teenagers. So mental health support is needed. We can't just look at physical health right now, even though that's really important. Mental health is also incredibly important, I would argue just as important as your physical health. So students need to know that if they're struggling, they are not alone. This is a really hard time and they need to reach out for help. They can reach out to teachers, any teacher that they feel comfortable. Teachers are not psychologists, but we can get you in contact with them, and we can also just be an adult to support you. School social workers and psychologists, I know our school social worker is available. But it's imperative that students reach out because in a classroom, teachers are able to walk around and have that face-to-face interaction with students to let them know I'm here for you, and also to pick up on if they're not feeling right. Like as a teacher, I did that all the time. Like, are you okay? And then students can tell me. But since I don't see you every day and your teachers don't see you every day, it is so important that if you are struggling, you reach out to someone. It can be as easy as an email that says, I'm having a hard time. I need help, right? But it's really important that all teens, all young people are made aware of the resources that are still available to them, even if we aren't together physically. So some conclusions that my research brought me to: while the actual virus isn't plaguing most young people's physical health, the effects of isolation and economic stress on families is a serious stress to teenagers' mental health. So even if this plague isn't plaguing teenagers' bodies at the same rate it is older people, it is plaguing their minds, arguably more so than the older population. And that is a very serious issue, which is why your teachers can't wait till we can actually be with you again and support you the way we used to. While there are resources to help students, getting the virus's spread under control and being able to return to school and normal routines is crucial to restoring a student's sense of mental stability. Right now, we are surviving and managing, right? But none of us are, like, very few of us are thriving right now. There are some, but that's not the main population. One of my conclusions from this is that it's so important that everyone think about others right now and do their part to not spread the virus, because if the virus continues to spread at the rate it is right now, schools cannot reopen. So I want to see everyone take as much personal ownership over it as possible and help things return to normal. Human connection is such an important part of everyone's mental health, and what needs to be strengthened are techniques for how to reach out to one another more efficiently when not physically together. So that's something that as a teacher, I'm going to continue to work on as this virtual learning continues, how to better reach out to my students in this format, and how to best support you until we can be together again. And that's my presentation. So I'm hoping that by watching this presentation, you got some ideas of how you can present your findings if you are doing the presentation option. All right, thank you for watching.